From 1979 to 1999, most of the asbestos-related deaths in the Empire State were in the working-class boroughs of Queens, with 228 being from mesothelioma and 62 from asbestosis. In contrast, in the nearby borough of Bronx, there were only 69 and 24 respectively. Part of this is due to population. The population of Queens is about one-third larger than that of its neighboring borough. Queens is also more industrialized, and it is industrial occupations that run the highest risk of asbestos exposure. In New York State as a whole, there are nearly 400 job sites, public buildings, and institutions at which asbestos exposure has been an issue. Although the high-risk industries, shipyards, power generation plants, oil refineries, and chemical companies, are certainly well represented, the list includes nearly everything else: schools, public housing units, sewage treatment plants, office facilities, churches and synagogues, and even restaurants and food preparation companies. Before going into some of the details of these, however, it is worth looking at the Empire State's naturally occurring asbestos, as well as a mining operation at which workers have been suffering unusually high rates of asbestos-related disease and non-industrial accidents resulting in asbestos exposure. The talc mines. In 2007, there was an asbestos scare in Connecticut schools over clay that contained talc contaminated with asbestos fibers being used in art classes. While administrators attempted to calm fears by stating that asbestos amounts in said clay were negligible, it should be noted that until 1981, Jefferson County, one of the two areas in northeastern New York State in which talc is mined, had one of the highest rates of mesothelioma in the nation. This corresponds with the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry asbestos map, which places one of New York State's naturally occurring asbestos deposits within Jefferson County in the vicinity of Gouverneur. The other two, which is where the sites of mining operations, are located further east near the Vermont state line. Accidental and other non-industrial exposure. The asbestos fallout resulting from the collapse of the World Trade Center has been covered extensively elsewhere. Suffice it to say here that over 5,000 tons of the W.R. Grace & Company product Monocoat was used on the iron framework, and possibly more. Asbestos fibers rained down on Lower Manhattan and Brooklyn in the days that followed, and there continue to be elevated respiratory problems to this day. Another problem that is ongoing is that of aging underground steam pipes insulated with asbestos that finally explode. This happened in Manhattan during the summer of 2007, as well as in Boston the following September. It has, in fact, happened a number of times in major cities over the past 20 years as corporate tax loopholes cause government revenues to dry up, with aging infrastructure not being maintained properly often the result. Why so many non-industrial buildings? New York City was arguably the birthplace of the modern American asbestos industry. Although the substance had been used for centuries, it was Henry Ward Johns, founder of what later became Johns Manville, who started developing and marketing asbestos building materials in Manhattan just prior to the U.S. Civil War. As a result, a huge number of old and historic buildings in the Mid-Atlantic and New England states have been required extensive asbestos abatement. In 1988, EPA estimates suggested that at the time, there were perhaps as many as 500,000 public buildings nationwide in which asbestos may have been a problem. Although asbestos abatement has become a major industry, and such projects are undertaken on a regular basis, progress is slow. Asbestos continues to be discovered in these buildings on a regular basis. Legal resources in New York. A search through the New York Federal District Court cases for asbestos-related personal injury product liability lawsuits brings up an extensive list of more than 40 cases from 2006 and 2007. Some of these cases are issues such as petitions for removal from asbestos litigation or federal questions regarding asbestos being answered by the New York court. However, many of these cases are personal injury lawsuits brought by individuals affected by asbestos-related disease. New York is ranked fourth in the U.S. for mesothelioma cases. With a mesothelioma mortality rate of 10.79 per million, New York has a crude mortality rank of 32 in the country. In 2003, a key New York asbestos case was settled. A New York jury awarded more than $47 million to a boilermaker who worked as a contractor for Consolidated Edison, Inc. and the Keyspan Corp. Unit of Long Island Lighting Company. The man was diagnosed with mesothelioma in May of 2001. The jury found the two New York utility companies negligent both in their actions and in their failure to advise workers of asbestos dangers. In the 2005 case of Seitz versus Jacobson and Company, an appeals court in New York overturned a ruling by a workers' compensation board panel. The panel had determined that an asbestos claimant did not file a timely appeal, but the appeals court found instead that the panel had overlooked an extension the plaintiff was granted in which to file the appeal. The court reversed the panel's dismissal of the claims and sent the case back to the panel to determine whether the right to death benefits ceased with the death of the victim's surviving spouse. The case stemmed from John Seitz, a sheet metal worker who claimed to have developed metastatic small cell anaplastic lung cancer after being exposed to asbestos in his workplace. After Seitz died, his widow filed a workers' compensation claim. Seitz's wife also passed away before the case was decided, and the judge closed the case. The case was reopened on behalf of the estate of the sheet metal worker. The case opened the question of whether a claim could still be made even after the widow had passed away. Those interested in filing lawsuits should know that the statute of limitations for personal injury law in New York is 3 years, with a discovery rule for toxic exposure that states that this amount of time begins when the problem, in this case the mesothelioma, either was discovered or should have been discovered. Wrongful death cases in the state have a 2-year statute of limitations, with the time beginning at the date of death. While New York has no specific statute concerning asbestos product personal injury suits, according to the State Workers' Compensation Law 3, compensation is payable for injuries or death incurred by employees who are involved in the manufacture of asbestos. Thank you for watching. This video was produced by Asbestos.Net, a leading resource on all aspects of asbestos and mesothelioma. Our priority is to inform victims about the devastating effects of asbestos exposure, mesothelioma, asbestos cancer, asbestosis, and other asbestos-related diseases, and to advise them with a wealth of information. Individuals whose lives have been touched by mesothelioma have numerous questions and concerns. Their caregivers and family members also need accurate, reliable information. If you or a loved one have been diagnosed with mesothelioma or asbestos cancer and need more information, we invite you to visit and explore the thousands of pages of oncologist-reviewed material on Asbestos.net, to call our convenient toll-free number shown below and speak with a mesothelioma specialist, or to use the simple contact form found at Asbestos.net to request a free copy of our informative books, custom inserts, and DVD. Asbestos.net. Information and help for patients and families.